Welcome to the show. My name is IanTheHRPro, and this is, wait for it, there it is. I didn't put it up on the screen. This is Ian the HR Pro live podcast. I am dangerously unscripted, so swears might come out. I'm completely lost. If I'm looking this way, I'm thinking, and I'm just looking out my window. Sorry, people have commented on that. Like, why are you looking over there? Are you reading a teleprompter? There's no teleprompter. This is unscripted, man. I'm no script. I'm too lazy to create a script. So, yeah, I'm lucky I'm putting in notes from show to show so I know what I was talking about if there's something I wanted to continue talking about. So that's great. Today is Tuesday. On the show today, Tuesday topic is Indigenous allyship, Indigenous relations, everything Indigenous. Because I'm Indigenous. Why wouldn't I talk about this? Indigenous equity, diversity, and inclusion, EDI, DEI, however you want to put the words. Sometimes people put injustice in there, so you get Jedi. I mean, that's pretty cool. But I consider Indigenous allyship, Indigenous EDI as a subset of HR. So I'm an HR consultant. So just like I consider safety to be a department of HR, I consider the EDI or the Indigenous issues as a subset of human resources, just like training would be a subset of human resources. We train your employees, we train managers, right? All this is wrapped up into this. We train the managers on how to train your employees. That's what HR does. But it's not too bad today. I am still on the quest for a haircut, and I haven't gotten to it because I'm a lazy bum. I don't know why everything seems high and it's noticeable. The screen is weird today. Try to put it up a little bit. Maybe I'll put it down a little bit. I don't know what to do. It's alright. It's my show. I don't know what's going on. I think I started maybe 1 or 2 minutes late, when normally I'm about 3 minutes late. So that's good. That's good. Doing good. Having a good day. So I recently picked up a contract. I'm a small business owner. I picked up a contract to do some HR training for a well-known, large, Canada-wide training company. So that's great. But on top of that, I've been speaking with Kairos Canada. I used to be an employee of Kairos Canada back in 2018, 2019, before the pandemic, and early 2020 during the pandemic. I actually got a really great job, and I left Kairos. I got a really great full-time contract, so I did that for most of 2020. So, but I stopped being a person. I'm an employee of Kairos Canada. Kairos Canada is an organization, a nonprofit organization created by 12 or 13 different church groups. So different churches, different ideologies, they came together and said, let's form Kairos Canada and we will fund them to do their work. And the purpose of the work was essentially reconciliation. The church, those churches involved said, we acknowledge that the church was involved with some terrible deeds in the past. So now, as the church, we are trying to do our part on reconciliation. So it was actually very interesting being a part of that group. And when I left Kairos, I was basically a facilitator for the Kairos blanket exercise. And I've been doing that ever since. Me and my wife are both certified Kairos blanket exercise facilitators, and as an Indigenous person, I lead the facilitation. My wife is not Indigenous, so she can't lead the facilitation. She can only co-facilitate with me. What is the Kairos blanket exercise? The Kairos blanket exercise started off as a one-page activity for teachers to give them an activity to teach their students. The Kairos blanket exercise comes out of the Royal Commission in 1997, I believe, and basically from there it said there's all kinds of wrongs that have happened with Indigenous people. We need to do better. So this was the first real big government investigation to say, yes, there was wrongs. And this basically triggered all the truth and reconciliation process, and right up to today, like all the different things. It's supported land claims, and because there's the proof that wrong had been done. And out of that, Kairos said, actually it was a precursor to Kairos, said let's make this activity. So it started in 1997, 98 as a one-page teaching tool, teaching activity for teachers. The Kairos blanket exercise in its current form, version 5 or 5th edition, is 24 pages long. It's a 24-page long script that the facilitators follow and read, and along with that is 22 scrolls that the participants read, and they're historical facts and quotes from famous historical people in Canada. And the idea of the Kairos blanket exercise is that it's a 500 plus year history lesson of the relationship between the government of Canada, aka the colonial government, and all the settlers that came to Canada, and Indigenous people that were here for over 35,000 or 37,000 years. So this is a history lesson since just before the start of colonization. And it is a very good starting point if you or your organization wants to start the reconciliation journey, because it is a history lesson that's kind of a blanket. These are the facts of what happened. And now that you know the base and the facts, you can move on with your reconciliation actions within your organization. If you are familiar with the 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada that was chaired by the late, great Murray Sinclair, the Honorable Murray Sinclair. He was a senator. I think he was a judge for a while, right? Very important Indigenous person in Canada who just passed away last year. And it always makes me sad to think about it. He did so much to, get this reconciliation going within Canada. Reconciliation isn't about setting blame. It's about remembering and understanding the past and how do we move forward. So that's what the Kairos blanket exercise is all about. It's a history lesson, gives you the base information that you need to move forward. It's not about blame, things like that, right? The courts are handling any of the situations that need handling. But for the rest of us, we learn, we remember, we move forward together. And if you speak to any Indigenous person, yes, there's anger, but at the same time, they just want to move forward. And especially elders and things like that, they're saying, let's just move forward. We know what's going on. Let's work together properly now, because we didn't have that. There was no proper relationship at the beginning. So I'm a facilitator for that, and we book, I don't know, quite a few, right around September 30th, which is National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, through September and October. We book a lot of KBEs, and the host organizations call us in. They have anywhere from 20 to 50 of their employees join the exercise, and we teach history. And it is an education part of the 94 calls to action. So most of the 94 calls to action, they don't apply to every business and every organization. There's specific calls to action that are for healthcare, for education, for business. And a lot of my clients are businesses or nonprofits. So you look at primarily call to action number 92. And there is an education component that says teach your staff about these topics. And that's what the Kairos blanket exercise is the base for. So if your organization is thinking of, let's do some reconciliation stuff, start with a Kairos blanket exercise, or we also call it a KBE. So it's a great starting point. And then you can work to do your other things. A lot of organizations already have an Indigenous liaison person that is working towards these things, and it's usually them who phone me and say, hey, we need this. So I would say if you have a large organization, I would offer this a couple times a year for like the next 10 years, right? Because you want to make sure all your employees get a chance to experience it, so that they can understand the underlying history of why your organization is doing reconciliation things. This will help your employees understand. Hot, not quite lava, but it's still hot. That's my Earl Grey tea. I don't like it hot. So it lets your employees understand why you're doing these reconciliation actions. Why are you doing a land acknowledgement at the start of any meeting, big meeting, staff meeting, right? What's the history behind these things? Because sometimes we implement these things and people just don't understand why. I know I've been part of organizations where we do a land acknowledgement at the start of every meeting, and I've been called out a couple times. Why are we doing this? Why are we wasting our time doing this? And I had to try to explain this. And it's very hard to explain that to somebody, right? That's your covert racism. It's not a cultural indoctrination. It's a historical fact remembrance situation, because the idea is, with the land acknowledgement, we acknowledge that Indigenous people have been here on every part of Canada for 37,000 years, and we need to acknowledge that to make us all think in a good way to move forward. And it's not about erasing history. It's definitely about remembering history. And yes, if you have some covert racism or some level of racism that you maybe haven't dealt with, then acknowledging Indigenous people can be hard for you. And we hope that the Kairos blanket exercise can give you some clarity and help you on that reconciliation journey. So, but I was speaking to Kairos today, and of course, I'm a facilitator, and I book and facilitate the Kairos blanket exercise. But when I worked for Kairos, I also helped train new facilitators. So I am in the process of becoming a general instructor for Kairos, where I will train new facilitators. And I'm really excited about this because I did this a little bit when I worked for them. So it's kind of bringing me back home, right? But it will also give me, my business, more opportunities, because I know this year we were we had so many bookings that my wife almost said no to some of them because she would have to take days off work to come help me facilitate, because I had no spare facilitator. I didn't know anyone local who was certified to come help me. So now I get to be in that process of making sure we get more facilitators for this important work. And I hope this works out. I hope it's good. And there's a mentorship process with it. So once you take the training, you now move into mentorship mode, and then you have to come work with me and see the co-facilitate in some fashion. So you get a handful of KBEs under your belt, and then at that point you can become a full facilitator like me, and you can start leading your own KBEs. But right, once you're a full facilitator, in order for you to lead, you have to be Indigenous, because it is Indigenous history that we're addressing. So, and it works out great because I'm Indigenous and my wife's non-Indigenous. So I'm doing the narrator part. I embody the Indigenous people during the exercise, and my wife plays the European part and embodies the settlers and the Canadian government as it forms, right? So, I mean, it kind of works out. A little bit stereotypical, but that's fine. That's the way it is. Because the participants need to see that it's Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people working together, right? And I think that's a really great thing. So once you can become a full facilitator, you can help me facilitate, you can help other facilitators, or you could start your own business or become your own facilitator and do your own thing, right? So I'm excited. It's train to trainer work. I'm really excited. So it should start happening soon. I'm a little bit torn with my business because I'm an HR professional. I really want to excel my business with HR. And I think that's been a hard gig for me, being Indigenous, to really break into the HR industry. So, I spend all this time talking HR and trying to become the HR person, and it's hard. It's hard. It feels like coming back home. I'm coming back to my roots as an Indigenous person. I have the ability to train and teach Indigenous history to organizations, and I'm really thinking of trying to double down on that, especially now that I'm doing the general instructor role for Kairos here in Alberta and northern Alberta, possibly all of Alberta. And hopefully we can start getting some real trainers out there. And the main thing is that an organization, some big organization with 10,000 employees comes in and says, we want to do reconciliation within our organization and we need some facilitators inside the organization. So I would go in and I would train their internal facilitators. And I think that's great. I think that's great. The big organizations wanting to do this. And it makes it, it does make it a little bit hard for a small organization to get a Kairos blanket exercise because you need 20 to 50 people. It could go as low as 15. We've gone as low as like 5. And we use stuffed animals. My wife had a great idea. It's just not quite as effective. So I hope that this new iteration, this slight pivot, I was apprehensive and scared about leaning into the Indigenous side of my business with my Indigenous heritage, because I've experienced just enough racism that it puts me in a sad place, and I gotta find some way to flip the switch and create it, make it my power, make it my superpower essentially. So I've been hesitant to make this change, this official change with my business. I'm scared to put it on my website. Sometimes it is on my website. You kind of HR or Indigenous relations, right? You kind of see it, but I feel like I need to double down and do more, because it has been lucky, blessing, however you want to call it, that I am getting this sort of training work, and I'm able to make a little bit of money off it, right? So you might want to book your Kairos blanket exercise now before I get all full in the head and think I can charge a lot more. You'll get it a lot cheaper now. And I just hope this works out. We talk about the racism that I've experienced, and last week, it wasn't last week, I don't think I had a show last Tuesday. We had some personal appointments, I think, going on that day, so I didn't go live on last Tuesday. I apologize. But so this is what, show number 10 for Indigenous Allyship. Oh boy. So, and the last show I was going through the racism scale, and I only got through the first half, the top part of the racism scale. So I kind of want to get back into that, because it kind of rolls out just fine into that. So give me a moment. I didn't open it, man. So I gotta find it. It's in my folders someplace. It should be in here. Oh, no, not that one. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Oh my God. I got like 10,000 documents, and of course I never... Here it is, racism scale. Let's open that up. I feel like Is that volume too loud? I feel like that's too creepy. Maybe it's just my volume. Maybe I'll just turn down my volume a little bit. Well, I'm trying to keep the volume at a low enough place that it doesn't drown out my voice, but high enough so it drowns out my voice. So, I'm going to share my screen, and let's look at the racism scale again. We started this the last time I spoke about Indigenous relations. Should I go big like that? Let's go big like that. It's big like that. So, we spoke about the top row here, basically from terrorism to denial. And in this boxed out section that goes on this top here to the second level, it's feelings of white guilt can lead to and compound many of these behaviors. So what we're trying to do is, with the Kairos blanket exercise, is give you truth. The blanket truth, the base level. This is history, and hopefully it makes you think, oh, I might be a little covertly racist. I was at a community meeting last month, and I made a comment about this community project that's not going through, that maybe it's not going through because the powers that be realized that it is a Muslim group that is kind of backing this move, this play, this project. And I think the power that be's realized that, oh, this is a bunch of brown people trying to do something. So I mentioned that, and there was a person at that meeting that said, oh, playing the race card, eh? When you make a comment like, oh, you're playing a race card, you're telling everyone in the room that you are racist. You were covertly racist until you made that comment, and that's the big surprise, I'm racist, right? So where is that? I don't even know if it's on this scale, but it's somewhere in here in this denial, justification, right? It's right in here. How am I privileged if I'm poor? Right. These sorts of things, racism no longer exists. So you're thinking, oh, playing a race card because racism no longer exists. It does. It's everywhere. And here in Canada, we are very covert, aka polite, about our racism, where in other places, especially the United States, it's a little more out there. And I think with the advent of conservative governments or right-wing governments, it's emboldening people thinking that they are allowed to be overtly racist. That's where they way down over here. Overt racism is basically one step away from being a terrorist, man, right? So that's what we talked about last time. So I'm going to move down to the second page. And of course, we want to make sure that the acknowledgements are here. Kristlyn MD, right? This was made in 2019. I've seen this used by EDI instructors and things like that. So we start getting into a little more less racist. So we think about the white savior. It's the white person who comes into any group, whether it's Indigenous or Black people or brown people, any people of color, and they start saying things like whites were slaves too, and there are plenty of successful people of color. They just need to work harder, right? It's basically you're saying that people of color are lazy, and excuse me, and you can roll that into immigrants are lazy, and this is part of the scapegoating that our governments are playing with us. Your life sucks because that person's color, that person's sexual orientation, that person's sex, that person's country of origin, whatever, right? Like that person's first language. It's those two don't relate to each other. Your life doesn't suck because a new Canadian moved to Canada. That is far from the truth, because it is proven that immigrants are very hardworking and are very successful and start a lot of small businesses, and they understand that they can build the American dream. The whole reason why any person immigrated to North America was that American dream, right? Land, resources, opportunity to make money, whatever it was. Of course, there's the fact that they steamrolled over Indigenous people, conquered them in the United States, created treaties, and then did not uphold the treaties here in Canada, right? That's that's what happened there. But when you go into an organization and think, oh, I know what these people need, that's the role of white savior. You shouldn't be a white savior. You should be the person that comes in. I've got skills and know-how. How can I help you? Tell me how you need me, right? What is needed here? What do you feel is needed? And I'll try to help, right? That's a better situation than saying, I got all these skills. I know exactly what you need. Just do what I say, right? That's white savior. If we can't use the N-word, they shouldn't either. Taking it back, right? Taking back the N-word. And are you seriously jealous as a white person that you can't use the N-word? Oh my. Oh my. Like that is, you're upset. You can't use a racial slur. Yeah, you're racist. You shouldn't be upset that you can't use the N-word. You should be very mindful never to use the N-word. Right? And then we start moving into the woke justification. You hear about this woke, and you hear people on the right, the conservatives, saying that woke is bad. Woke means you're educated and know the facts. That's woke. So there is no need for people of color to have their own safe places. We are all one. Oh my God. I don't want to tell you how many times I've gone into some sort of business or store and security guards follow me and employees suddenly appear beside me adjusting the shelves. When I worked at Walmart, it was called zoning. You go in and you make sure everything looks good on the shelf, right? And suddenly they're there. But nobody's over there following my white wife, and nobody's bothering her. And This is a fact. This is, like, you can't argue my lived experience. This is what happened to me. I've had cashiers yell at me because the cashier made a mistake. In this particular case, the cashier accidentally gave my points card for their store to the customer in front of me, some little old lady. She was doing her checkout, and then while the little old lady was paying, the cashier reached over and grabbed my card. And then the little old lady paid, and she finished doing her till work. And then just then, the cashier said, "I'm going on break," and this other cashier showed up. The new cashier put her till in, put her money in, or whatever, got her till going. And then she said, "Where's your points card?" And I was like, "I already gave it to the other cashier." And she couldn't find it. She couldn't find it anywhere. And I'm like, "Well, I don't have it. Go ask her where she put it." And I believe she just accidentally gave it to the little old lady. So this little old lady had my card. I don't know if she used it. I don't remember. We don't even go to that store much anymore. And so I don't know. Maybe I'm getting points. I don't know. I'd have to check. But this is okay. It's a mistake. It happens. I wasn't upset at this point. But the cashier goes and gets the other cashier who's on break. And instead of going around to the till to talk with the other cashier, she came up the aisle behind me. And I swear to God, I'm not a tall guy. I'm 6'1" with my shoes on. And she was maybe this tall beside me, right? But she just looked like a giant because she started yelling at me. "How dare you accuse me of stealing your card?" I'm like, "What the fuck?" Like, I wasn't stealing. I didn't accuse her of stealing nothing. And she was yelling at me and just going off. Another cashier came over, a cashier that I know from the store because me and my wife, that was our regular store. And I was grateful that she showed up, but she wasn't a supervisor. So she's trying to calm down this other cashier because this cashier knew me, knew my face. And I'm just getting yelled at. And I am a big softie. So you look at the my logo for the show, it's a rabbit and a bear. Right? And that's basically my two parts. That's the rabbit because my last name is Hopfee, so it sounds like hopper, rabbit, right? That's the cool side of me, the wannabe cool guy. That's why the rabbit has sunglasses on. The bear, that's me. I'm a big teddy bear. I'm a very emotional person. I get upset very quick. I don't handle the trolls very well. I've started just copying and pasting the trolls message into ChatGPT to give me an answer because I would rather just start crying and stop making content than to respond to that troll. And I feel like I should be just deleting the comment and carrying on, even though it might be probably the best thing to do. So I'm a big teddy bear. I'm very emotional. It takes a lot. I get upset. Yes, I get upset with myself. I get upset with the situation. I'm trying to get something done. I'm especially get upset in the kitchen. Everything just annoys me when I'm in the kitchen. But I'm not mad at anybody. It takes me a lot to be mad at somebody. It takes a lot to get me to the point where I'm going to yell back at you or possibly threaten you with violence, right? Like, if you get me riled up to the point where I'm yelling back at you, that is an amazing feat. You have gone above and beyond to be a complete a-hole slash Karen slash whatever you want to call it, right? You've gone above and beyond to anger me, and I don't anger fast or very well. I'm usually calm and collected, especially in public. It's just me at home yelling at myself, banging pots in the kitchen. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm just upset. I hate tasks. I hate household tasks, but whatever. So this cashier yelling at me, top of her lungs. I think she was even swearing at me. How dare you accuse me of trying to steal your card? Why would I need your card? I have my own card, or whatever. I don't even remember, because I don't even know how long it lasted. I basically blanked out most of that interaction with her yelling at me. And it was more like I was watching from above as opposed to participating in that. I couldn't say anything to her. I was just so stunned. I was so stunned at the reactions, this violent reaction she came back with. And up until that point, I was thinking, oh, well, accidents happen, bad mistake. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. I think she gave it to the little old lady. And I just wanted, what I wanted from her was to come back and just check the till and then say, so sorry, I do remember taking the card from you. And I think I did give it to the little old lady. That would have ended it. But no, she came back and as an employee got violent with me, yelling, pointing at me. And finally, the manager on duty showed up. And sorry, I keep looking down this way because that's where I am on the screen right now. The manager on duty finally yelled her to say, stop talking, come over here, right? I found out later, I'll get to that in a second, I then had to fill out a new points card form and had to get them to combine my points somehow. I don't know how many, if I lost points or if they managed to combine my points, but I think they did combine my account because my email and name and address and everything were correct. So I think they combined my account and canceled my old card. So I guess that little old lady isn't giving me points. But I found out, I don't know, a while longer. Like we would go shopping there weekly, me and my wife. And this was one time I went by myself, right? We always had this, Ian's got bad luck. He shouldn't go anywhere by himself. At that point, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 15 plus years ago, we didn't realize that it was racism, covert racism that I was experiencing when I was by myself. And that didn't register for us because at that point, she, obviously my white wife, she didn't understand. So we just chalked it up to Ian's bad luck. But we found out, like, I don't know, like a month or two later or something like that, we ended up speaking to the cashier that we normally see and that we knew she's the one who came to defend me in that situation. And she told us that shortly after that cashier actually got fired. So I guess there was more incidents and she actually got fired. And we were like, well, good. Like, she definitely deserved getting fired because she wasn't reacting very well. And I just feel like, did she react that violently to me because I was Indigenous? I mean, she was so hot. She came in hot, and there's no way, shape, or form that she could have thought rationally about the situation, even if I tried to explain it and be calm. Because at that point, I basically didn't say anything. And I filled out this new form, and we were already holding up the line, and I filled out that form and didn't allow the line to progress. As I'm like almost crying, trying to fill out this form, trying to hold my composure in a public place. And I got it done. I think I cried on the way home. Right. And it was, I don't know, hollow justice that she got fired. I would really have preferred if she had have learned from her mistake, her situation, and was able to carry on in a good way. It's hard for me to continue to be angry with someone. I feel more guilt. Not guilt. I feel pity. I feel pity for what is happening in this person's life. I mean, if you were just a good person and treated people properly, like these situations wouldn't be a big deal. How did this affect her life? Did she walk away thinking that this big Indigenous looking dude was accusing her of theft, and now her whole life has been skewed because of it? Whereas honestly, up until she started yelling at me, I was thinking, oh, just a mistake. It's very inconvenient for me. But it was a mistake. And she wouldn't even acknowledge. I don't believe she acknowledged in that rant, tirade of hers. I don't think she acknowledged that she made a mistake. Our customer service, man. It is hard. I understand where she's coming from. It's hard to keep your composure when you're dealing with a customer like that. I've held these jobs. I've held these retail jobs where I had to be nice to people even when they were being complete a-holes. And in most jobs where I was running the till, the regulars loved me. The regulars became my store friend, right? It's the person at the store where you start telling your deep, dark secrets. Right. I worked at a video store. That dates me a little bit. But this was still just in the 2000s. So I'm at a video store, and these customers, they were cold when I first started working. They were cold towards me. And by the time I left the store, they would be saying, "Hi, Ian," waving at me when they came in the store. And both husband and wife were sharing stuff with me, their life or whatever. One time the wife, and this was before cannabis was legalized, she told me about her last weekend. Her and her girlfriends went out on a girls' weekend, like they rented a cabin or something, and they had drinks and they smoked a bunch of wacky tobacco, and she was just telling me about the weekend. I'm like, what is going on? Like this person is telling me like these these secrets. So I know that eventually I can usually win people over and let them know that I'm not an a-hole. But where did that cashier sit on this line, right? I don't know where she was sitting, but safe spaces. I did not feel safe at that grocery store that day. Absolutely did not feel safe. And I was actually nervous about going back to the grocery store. And I was always looking out for her. And it wasn't until this other cashier told us that she had been fired that I started to feel safe in that store again. So, ethnic food stores, ethnic community groups, we think Indigenous, we think about the friendship centers and things like that, right? Like we need these places because everybody's different and we need to feel safe. And if you're saying, why do people need a safe space? Well, that's because there's still covert racism all over the place. And there's still some overt racism that we experience. I have never experienced something where someone called me a racial slur to my face. I have not experienced that. But that is only the overt racism, where someone is in a space where they feel like they're powerful enough to be outwardly racist, right? But I've been in lots of situations where someone's acting weird around me, security guards following me, cashiers acting weird, employees acting weird, and it's there. And anyone who says it isn't there or that we don't need these special places is, oops, racist. So there's only one race, the human race. This is, yes, there is only one human race. But for some reason, some members of that race don't like members of the race who have darker skin tones or have a stronger accent or have a different sexual orientation or whatever, have a different cultural tradition. And that's an excuse. You try to sound like you care about everybody. We're all one race, stop fighting. I mean, that coming from a white person is an indication that you're covertly racist, right? Love conquers all. More like hate conquers all. A white person or someone who's not a person of any sort of color or not a part of the LGBTQ plus community, they shouldn't be saying phrases like love conquers all, because that's covert racism. That's you uncomfortable about being around people of color or people that are different, right? Love does not conquer all. Certainly not in this day and age. Performative ally. I will help you, but only if I lead. Now, this comes back to the white savior situation, right? It's very close. I want to help, but I got to be in charge and we got to do it my way. No, that's not how it works. You have to give your power and your privilege up to the person in the room that doesn't have any power or privilege, right? I spoke to an EDI expert, instructor, trainer, facilitator lady, and in Canada, she has very little power and privilege because she is a woman of color in Canada. She's basically right down with Indigenous women of color, right? They're right there. No power, no privilege, and it's sad. And she expressed this. This is her lived experience, and I totally agree. Well, when she goes back to her home country, she is treated differently. She isn't that black woman at the grocery store that security has to follow. She is this educated Canadian in her home country. Because she's educated in Canada and she goes back to help with certain things, they treat her differently. She has the power and privilege because of where she lives and the education she holds. And she talked about how this was so shocking to her. And it was very uncomfortable for her to be held up, be put on that pedestal when she spends all her time in Canada as the lowest you could possibly be in this country, power and privilege wise, right? So if you want our help, they should be nicer and more respectful. People of color, people of any sort of minority situation group have been fighting to be treated with respect, to be treated as equals for so long that a comment like this is a kick in the nuts, man. Basically, you're treating a person of color as a child that doesn't know any better. And so you're like, oh, you're not getting a cookie unless you act right and apologize, right? Like, why are you treating a whole section of the human race as they're just little kids that are unruly and don't know anything? When in actuality, it's the other way around. We know this. Being involved in this will help my reputation, right? You want to go be an ally, but you're only using it to advance your career. And I try not to judge someone who is in a role like Indigenous liaison when they're not Indigenous. I try very hard. Not to point that out. I try to work with them as best I can. But that first impression of a white person as the Indigenous liaison is another kick in the nuts, right? Like, why is this white person telling me about myself? So anyway, I mean, there could be good intentions, but you really have to be that real ally to prove that you're trying to help. You're moving into the awareness finally. I expect praise and or publicity. I'm helping these people. Yay! This is oil companies to the T. They roll into a new community. They're setting up something. They're drilling wells, or they're buying a some well infrastructure, oil infrastructure, construction infrastructure, whatever. They moved in. They've got their Indigenous relations liaison or their community liaison who comes in, and they donate $2,500 to the local community group, usually something like minor hockey league, right? And they have this big check. They do it all the time, so they have this pre-made check where they just write on it and they wipe off, and they do it again for the next event, right? So I expect praise or publicity. You are actively helping, but you're expecting something back for it, right? You always hear about these people who make donations after they pass away, and we find out that this person had made hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars worth of donations for a cause, and nobody knew while they were alive. Nobody knew. They were just doing their thing, trying to help where they could. And then we find out after they die that they did this for years and years. I mean, that person wasn't expecting anything, and they didn't want to be associated with their philanthropy, right? So, awareness. My experience as a white person is drastically different than that of a person of color. So now we're starting to get into a little more positive. It is hard for us to relate and or accept our life experience to someone else's life experience, and how things are different or the same. So the first step is saying, yes, what I experienced in my life is not the same as what someone else has experienced, especially if you're white and it's someone of color. So obviously with my last name, I am German descent also. My father was German descent. My mother was Indigenous, is Indigenous. She's probably listening. I love you, Mommy. And traditionally, as an Indigenous person, we follow the mother's line for who we are, our identity. So my mother is Indigenous, so I'm Indigenous, even though my father was white, and I carry his last name. And I experienced a different reality growing up. And it was a level of privilege and power that I was living with for my teen years and my young adulthood. So my closest friend was a white kid. When I was a child in the 80s, my best friend was a white guy. And when I was a teenager, my best friend was also a white guy. So there's a certain amount of privilege when your friend is not Indigenous. So that was kind of ingrained. I had other friends, and I think my closest friends right now are a couple of gentlemen who are both Indigenous. I would call them my two best friends right now. Shout out to Albert and Johnny. And it's it was different. It was a strange life growing up with a German last name. And in my home community, my father was a business owner. He was also on the school board for many years, and he was also the justice of the peace. So when people got arrested, it was my dad that went down to the police station and explained their charges and made them understand what they were being charged with. And I remember sitting in a police station just waiting for him, kind of hearing him talking every now and again. And on certain days when the judge couldn't make it to town, my dad got to go play judge for the day. He basically just rebooked every court case that day to another day when the judge could make it to town. So in northern Alberta, the judge some communities, the judge will come and just sit there for the day, traveling judge, and that way he's seeing local people in the local area. But every now and again the judge got sick or whatever happens, I don't know. My dad got to play judge, my white dad. So this was me as a teenager growing up. I had this white last name, a white dad who had a certain amount of authority in the community, and this is the identity I took with me into my young adulthood. And there's times where there was conflict with Indigenous people, and I didn't understand why. I was trying to be a good person, trying to do the right thing, but I didn't understand why there was conflict with my own people. Like, this is stupid. What? I'm just trying to do good here. Why are you yelling at me or whatever, right? So I eventually moved to Edmonton, right? And that's where I met my wife and the love of my life. And it was when I started working with Kairos that I got this major culture shock, identity shock. I don't know how you want to call it, but I was learning about racism, allyship, people of color, and I was very green with this stuff. And we did the exercise, the walk of privilege. Now, it's advised that you don't do the walk of privilege anymore, but it's basically, you have your group of people and they all line up on one side of the room or whatever, and then someone reads out situations. And if you've never experienced that situation, you step forward. So the questions could be geared towards racism, they could be geared towards sexism or ageism or whatever the issue might be that you're training with, right? So I did this. I only took 3 steps, whereas most of the people in the organization and our white managers in the organization, they all made it to the other side of the room, or very close. The only person who was way back near the start with me was an older Indigenous fellow, and he had only taken maybe 1 step, and I remember I took 3. I remember starting this activity thinking, yeah, I'm gonna be way up there at the front, and taking 3 steps out of like 20 questions. I think there was at least 20 questions. I was so far back. It just broke me. It broke me. And I'm On the other side of Canada, I'm in southern Ontario at a staff workshop training thing with all the other employees from the organization, and it broke me. My whole identity, my level of power and privilege, all this German sounding last name, white father who had authority, it just all came crumbling down. And in that moment, I no longer knew who I was. And I started crying and I had to leave the room. I didn't even get back to... We were at this place with boardrooms and activity rooms, and I think it was like an old monastery or something, but I didn't even get back to my room. I got down the long hallway that connected to the main building, and then I got around the corner into the main building hallway, and I couldn't walk anymore. I basically fell down onto a bench that was in the hallway, and I just sat there and cried. I had one employee, she came and talked to me, one coworker. She came and talked to me, and I'm so grateful for her, and I'm terrible, I can't remember her name. She lives in Vancouver, and that was the first bit of support I got when I realized that my identity was not in line with what people saw and how people treated me. So it was just a shock. And ever since then, my life was kind of raveling out, you know, when you get a thread coming off your sweater or something like that. Like, that's how it's been for 6-7 years now. Just re-identifying who I am. It's a very hard process for me. So I think it was, you know, I was living basically this white life when nobody saw me that way. So the strange looks, the bad luck Ian used to have, it all started to make sense, and just everything started clicking into place. And I'm so grateful. My wife, she has become my biggest ally, because she kind of went through this journey with me, seeing my identity just crack and fall apart. Before this, I used to say, oh, I kind of live between two worlds and I kind of understand both. And here it turns out I didn't understand both. And now I'm trying to learn and understand. I'm like 30 years behind identifying myself. You know, when you're a teenager, you start to form who you are as a person and things like that. And there was a lot of things as a teenager that I formed, I still believe in. I believe in green politics, and I believe in saving the planet, things like that, right? That's still there. But now this Indigenous side of things it's come in, and it's now finally starting to shape the true me. And it's sometimes it feels completely ridiculous. Other times it feels so sad, right? Anyway, so I totally understand that, you know, EDI people, instructors, facilitators, they probably won't They shouldn't be using that Walker privilege anymore, because it is a real shock. And I've experienced that shock. And that's why we've made changes to the Kairos blanket exercise. There's certain actions and activities that were in the original, like version 2, version 3, version 4 type thing, or, well, version 3. I think version 4 it changed, and version 5 it moved even further away from those soul-crushing actions that make people really disassociate from their life and who they are, their identity. So we move into the allyship. Yes, my life as a poor white person has been hard, but it isn't as hard as if I were poor and a person of color. So I really think about Indigenous women in Canada in this respect, the missing and murdered women. And, you know, Indigenous women are something like 12 times more likely to go missing or get murdered or kidnapped than white women. So that's something that we can obviously look at and say, oh, yeah, there's a big difference. There's this secret genocide going on that nobody wants to call a genocide, because there's someone being racist, or lots of people being racist, and, you know, killing Indigenous women. And there's always this big argument, well, I'm white and I'm poor too, right? Well, you're white and poor, but do you get racial slurs thrown at you every day? Do you get beat up for your sexuality every day? Right? Like, there's things that are more horrible than you can imagine than just being poor. Right? So you've got to acknowledge everyone's life. So the system in Canada, it's no one's fault right now. This is the system that was set up for us long ago, and we still live in it. We can certainly work to change things and acknowledge that things aren't right, aren't fair. But the original system of government, of the economy, was set up for rich, landowning white men. This is the base of the system. So if you're poor, well, you're obviously not rich and probably not a landowner, right? You're just a white person. And with that, there's sexism. Like, even white women weren't as privileged as a white man. But we do have the dangerous white woman tears, right? That's where we see the Karen come out and just freak out and start crying, and white men will just come flocking in to save the day. It's a very dangerous, insidious situation. So there is a lot of power in being a white woman. So kind of acknowledging that, you know, you might be poor, but the system is still benefiting you in that you're not being racialized or whatever, right? You're not having all these other issues that a person of color might be having. Systemic racism is very real and needs to be ended, right? That's what we talked about. The system was set up for rich, landowning white men, and it's changed a little bit, and it's disguised as we move forward. Yes, It's not as bad as it was, but it is still bad. Level of bad, right? I will make space for people of color. So, if you know, it's like a white person introducing a person of color as the expert in their field, and they yield the microphone to that person. You need to use your white power and privilege to lift up other people, and that's, you know, like a sacred duty, right? So you give up the space. You no longer expect praise and or publicity. You are freely giving the space up to the expert who's a person of color who needs that space and that support. You're saying, expert, 100% confident, you go, you have my confidence, 100% confidence, you go do your thing, I'm going to shut up and go disappear, right? So you need to actively do that. And sometimes when I'm at the Kairos blanket exercise, or I'm in a certain room doing training, I look around the room and I look at the white guys in the room, and I look at them in the face and I say, you guys have the most power and privilege in this room, and you need to acknowledge that, and you need to use that to raise up other people. I mean, when I'm facilitating or instructing, obviously I have the most power in that particular room, in that situation, right? But as soon as they leave the room, they have a responsibility to make sure everybody is heard. This is the abolitionist. Oh my God. So you want to end racism, right? I will put my safety, health, and freedom on the line to fight for people of color. I will let them lead and not try to be the center, right? This is, you look at an old-timey photo of one of the marches. I think it was the march across the bridge in Salina. You have Martin Luther King front and center, and then like 4 or 5 people over to the side is Bernie Sanders when he was 20 something, right? Like, there's a man that has been supporting this movement for so long. He marched with Martin Luther King. Like, come on now. That's it makes me think of Ocean's 11, and they talk about how certain people who've been around so long, there's a code of conduct amongst thieves or whatever, basically, and that stems from if you're old enough to have shook Frank Sinatra's hand, right? If you were around at that point and you shook his hand, then you were like this respected elder in in the industry in Vegas, and right. So there's this code of honor for those people that shook Frank Sinatra's hand, and this is what I'm thinking about with Bernie Sanders, right? He's been there so long, fighting this fight that he was in photos in these amazing times when the rights of, you know, people of color in the United States was still being fought for, and it's still being fought for now. But I mean, that's a classic photo. Someone like Bernie Sanders marching with an icon like Martin Luther King, right? And that's where, as a young man, he was giving his white power and privilege to people of color in the United States, right? He risked his life by marching with them. This is the ultimate situation. When you think about when you're out in public and you see someone get beat up or being yelled at, and you step in to diffuse the situation or protect that person, this is the ultimate place you want to be. You need to be helping these people in the moment. Me and my wife saw this little old white man yelling at a Home Depot employee one time in the aisle, and the Home Depot employee was an older South Asian fellow, and he had a thick Indian accent, and the old white guy was yelling at him and saying, "Get me someone who speaks English." Like, holy shit. And me and my wife were just stunned. And this was kind of at the start of that journey where my identity had fractured and crumbled. So we talked about it, and we decided moving forward, if we ever saw that again, we were going to step in. We were going to say something. We were going to defend that person. And that was kind of a turning point for us as people, right? Like, no, you don't disrespect another human being like that. And we're going to step in next time we see some injustice happening. And it kind of scares me sometimes. We slow down when we see cops handling people. I don't know what that means. Are we going to stop and just take some video? Are we going to scream at the cops to make it right? Are we going to get involved and fight the cops and get shot by the cops? Right? Like, I don't know what level of responsibility we might get ourselves involved with, but we're certainly going to say something when we see something. Those acts of overt racism, we're going to step up. We're going to say something. And I'm just so happy that my wife can be on this journey with me, and not fully understanding what I'm going through, but certainly a high level of understanding, being my ally. Anyway, oh my God, boring topic. We are done the racism scale. And done KBE discussion, right? I'm just going to put that in there so I at least know what the heck I talked about. So I'm going to unshare this so you can see me big in my glory. Oh my God, my hair gets worse every time I make myself bigger. Anyway, hour and 28 minutes. I forgot to tell you to ask a question. I'm always open to questions on the show. I thrive on questions. I forgot to put up the little scrolling notification that said, ask your questions in the comments. So I will try to address questions wherever you might be commenting them. I do pay more attention on LinkedIn and YouTube than any other platform when it comes to comments. So I'm sorry if you're somewhere else. We got to end the show before the Twitch spammer can spam the show. Anywhere from like 45 minutes to about an hour and a half. It feels like that's when the spammer shows up and tells us to go to Steamboot to get more followers. Anyway, I'm going to let you go. Tomorrow's going to be gigs and side hustles, aka small business marketing stuff. Let's talk about that tomorrow. All right, I'm going to talk to you later. Have a great day. Be